All right, buckle up, because today we're diving deep into the ethereal realm of angels.
Really going for it today, I see.
You guys wanted to go deep on this one, and
Yeah.
trust me, we're going way beyond those fluffy wings and halos.
It's amazing how much we think we know about angels,
Right,
yet how much there is to uncover when you really dig into it.
exactly.
Like, where do we even begin?
Well, you actually sent me this Wikipedia article,
Yeah.
just your casual, everyday Wikipedia on angels.
Yeah.
And I thought it would be cool to, use this as a jumping off point.
Familiar territory, but I'm sure we'll unearth something interesting.
Yeah, unearth some cool stuff.
Yeah.
For starters, where does the word angel even come from?
Well, it originates from the ancient Greek angelos, meaning messenger. But it's fascinating how that simple root evolved differently in Jewish and Christian traditions.
So are we talking different interpretations of the word itself, or just different ideas about what angels did?
Both, actually. You see, in early Hebrew texts, the term used malor could refer to both human and supernatural messengers.
Really?
It wasn't until later that the distinction became more defined, especially in how Jewish and Christian traditions diverged on the nature of good and evil.
Wait, so the lines between human and divine messengers weren't always so clear? That's wild. It's like the very concept of what an angel was still evolving.
Precisely. And to understand that evolution, we have to go back even further to the time before monotheism became dominant.
You talk about polytheistic beliefs, right? Multiple gods, each with their own domain.
Exactly. Now imagine those individual deities, each representing different forces in the world. As monotheism emerged, these entities didn't just disappear, they were reimagined, absorbed into this new framework.
So are you saying our modern concept of angels might actually be rooted in these older, more diverse deities?
That's a prominent theory. Think about figures like Michael or Gabriel. Powerful warrior-like angels. They share characteristics with older deities associated with El, a major god in ancient Semitic religions. Even Satan, who we now consider the epitome of evil, was once viewed as a force operating within nature, even within ourselves.
Those little whispers of temptation we all feel. You're saying those were once considered part of a more complex spiritual ecosystem, not just like straight up evil.
Exactly.
Wow.
And early Hebrew scriptures barely mention angels at all. God was a much more direct force in the world. But as the concept of God shifted from this powerful, ever-present entity to a more distant, merciful one, well, someone had to bridge that gap.
Right. Someone's got to do it. That's where angels step in. They become those intermediaries between humanity and the divine.
And interestingly, they seem to inherit some of the complexities of those earlier deities, especially as Jewish thinkers grappled with the influence of Zoroastrianism.
Zoroastrianism. Okay, see now, that's one I haven't explored much. What's their connection to angels?
It's a fascinating link. Zoroastrianism, an ancient Persian religion, had a profound impact on how we understand the cosmic battle between good and evil. They had beings like the Fervashi's guardian angels, assigned to every creature, and the Ameshaspentes, emanations of God himself. It's thought that these concepts resonated deeply with Jewish thinkers who were already grappling with ideas of a more complex spiritual world.
So this idea of a cosmic battle, of angels versus demons, it's not just a biblical concept. It's got roots in these older traditions. That's incredible.
Yeah.
But when it comes to Jewish traditions specifically, how are angels viewed?
In Judaism, angels are entirely distinct from and subordinate to God. They have no free will, existing solely to carry out his commands.
They're like what, celestial instruments? Like
Yeah.
perfectly designed for very specific tasks.
Precisely. And what's interesting is that despite their seeming perfection, the Talmud, a central text in Rabbinic Judaism, states that the Torah wasn't given to angels. It was given to humans.
Now that's fascinating. You're telling me these perfect beings, these messengers of God, weren't entrusted with the divine law. Why would that be?
It's a question that sparked centuries of debate. Some scholars believe it suggests that, despite our flaws, humans have a unique capacity for growth, for learning, and for change that even angels might not possess.
You're saying our very imperfection is what makes us valuable. That's a powerful thought.
It certainly challenges the idea that perfection is the ultimate goal, doesn't it? And speaking of a hierarchy of beings, Jewish mysticism gives us this fascinating figure, Metatron.
Metatron. Fill me in. Who's this guy?
Imagine an angel who serves as a scribe, meticulously recording the divine word. That's Metatron, a powerful figure in Jewish mystical texts.
The celestial note taker. I love it. Okay, so we've got this rich tapestry of angelic figures, each with its own role and purpose. But I have a feeling this is just the beginning of our journey.
Oh, absolutely. We've only just scratched the surface of the Jewish tradition. It's fascinating how Christianity, while inheriting those core beliefs about angels from Jewish tradition, also kind of added their own, unique flavor to the mix.
Okay, spill it. What did those early Christians have to say about angels?
Well, initially, they stayed pretty close to that core idea, angels as messengers, conduits of God's will. But you see, as Christianity developed, so did its angelology.
Develop. That sounds like code for things got a little more interesting.
Mhm.
So, like, what changed?
For one, the hierarchies, they became much more defined. Remember how we talked about all those different classes of angels in Jewish tradition? Well, Christianity. They took that concept and really ran with it.
Right. You're talking those angelic rankings, like
Mm.
the seraphim, cherubim, thrones. It's like the ultimate celestial pecking order. Who gets the best parking spot in heaven?
Exactly. And it wasn't just messengers anymore, right? They were distinct entities, each with specific attributes and responsibilities. And then, of course, you have those angelic heavy hitters, those angel superstars. I'm talking Michael, Gabriel, Raphael.
Each with their own, like, fan club. But we see those names everywhere, across different traditions. So what makes the Christian interpretation stand out?
It's partly about the visuals. You see, the Bible, it doesn't hold back on those descriptions, especially in the book of Revelation. You've got the four living creatures surrounding God's throne.
Wait, hold on. Those are angels.
Uh-huh.
See, I always pictured like something out of a fantasy novel. A man, a lion, an ox, an eagle, all rolled into one.
The very same. And these vivid descriptions, they really captured people's imaginations and they influenced how angels were depicted in art for centuries.
Speaking of art, I feel like we got to talk about how those depictions evolved over time, right?
Yeah.
Because early Christian art showed angels without wings, didn't they?
They did.
So when did they get their like iconic look? When did the wings come in?
It's a fascinating evolution. Those wings didn't really take flight until around the 4th century. One of the earliest known depictions of a winged angel is actually on something called the Prince's Sarcophagus, which is thought to be from the time of a Roman emperor, Theodosius I.
So from earthbound messengers to winged wonders, all thanks to a Roman emperor's tomb. That's quite the artistic glow up, wouldn't
Yeah.
you say? But it makes you wonder what prompted that shift. Was it just artistic license, or were there like deeper theological ideas at play?
That's the million-dollar question. And you know what? It could be a bit of both, honestly. Maybe those wings represented this growing emphasis on angels' transcendence, their separation from the earthly realm. Like they're not of this world.
Yeah. And it's not just the wings either, right? What about those flowing robes? Or sometimes they're like decked out in armor, like warriors. Angelic fashion, man, that's a whole other deep dive waiting to happen.
Absolutely. Those flowing robes, yeah, they became standard attire, especially in later Western art, particularly for Gabriel. And then you have those warrior angel vibes, like Archangel Michael, always depicted in full battle gear, ready to throw down.
Talk about a power look,
Yeah.
right? It's like he just stepped out of some celestial battle epic.
And those visual cues, those were totally intentional. They conveyed very specific ideas about the roles and hierarchies of these beings, even if those meanings have, evolved over time.
Right, right. And let's not forget the halos. Got to have those halos. Where did those glowing headbands come from?
That's an interesting one. Halos, believe it or not, they actually predate Christianity. They appear in ancient Egyptian and Greek art, signifying divinity or like supernatural status. And early Christians, they just kind of adopted the halo and associated it with like holiness, spiritual enlightenment, basically, a visual shorthand for, hey, this being, yeah, this one's otherworldly.
It's amazing to see how all these different elements, the wings, the robes, the halos, those intense descriptions from the Bible, all these things came together to create these iconic images of angels that we just like instantly recognize today.
It's true.
But, got to be honest, not all angels are created equal in the looks department. Some of those biblical descriptions like the Ophanim and the Seraphim, those are some seriously intense beings. Wheels within wheels covered in eyes, creatures with 6 wings constantly praising God. Yeah, that's a little more intense than your average angel on a Christmas card.
You're not wrong, but I think that's part of what makes angels so endlessly fascinating. They represent something that's both like familiar and profoundly otherworldly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, but speaking of other traditions, we can't forget Islam, right? They have their own unique perspective on these celestial beings. So what role do angels play in Islamic belief?
Just like in Judaism and Christianity, angels, they're absolutely fundamental to Islam. But there are some like key distinctions.
Okay, so tell me, what makes Islamic angels stand out? What's their deal?
Well, for one, Islamic tradition really emphasizes that angels were created from pure light.
Interesting.
And this idea is tied to them, the angels, possessing reason. It's actually a key distinction from beings like the jinn, who are also mentioned in the Quran.
Oh, right, the jinn. So in this scenario, it's like angels are the brainy ones. No offense to any jinn listening out there.
You could say that, but you see, their intellect, it's not presented as something that, makes them superior. Rather, it just highlights their capacity to understand and carry out God's will perfectly.
Interesting, interesting. Okay, but speaking of God's will, is there any like angelic rebellion in Islamic tradition? Do we have any fallen angel situations going on?
There's actually this fascinating story of Harut and Marut. They're these two angels who are sent to Earth, but they're tempted by, human desires and stray from their divine purpose.
Ooh, a little angelic drama.
Sure.
Okay, what happened? Give me the details.
Well, it's considered a cautionary tale about the seductive nature of free will, even for beings who seem above such temptations. But ultimately, it really underscores that Islamic belief in angels' unwavering obedience to God. They might be tested, but that loyalty, it never wavers.
So they're not just mindless drones, right? They have the
Yeah.
capacity to choose, even if it means like making mistakes. That's a pretty nuanced take, honestly.
Mhm.
Are there any other like stories about angels in Islamic tradition that kind of shed light on how they're viewed?
Absolutely. I mean, Islamic tradition, it's filled with narratives about angels interacting with humanity. You have the angel of death, who plays this significant role in Islamic eschatology. And of course, there's the Miraj.
The Mirage. Okay, refresh my memory here.
Mhm.
What was that one again?
The Miraj is Muhammad's miraculous ascension to heaven, and who guides him on this incredible journey. Angels, of course.
Right. Only the best for such a high-profile assignment.
Mm.
But it really speaks to their role as these intermediaries, bridging the gap between like the earthly and the divine.
Exactly.
It's really incredible how these beings, even though they're figures of the spirit world, have such a tangible impact on like human history, human imagination.
Yeah. But it sounds like the story doesn't end with, like, the Abrahamic faiths, right?
You're right. The story doesn't end there.
What about other belief systems? What do they have to say about angels?
Well, a lot of other traditions offer their own, fascinating perspectives on angelic beings. Take Swedenborgianism, for example.
Yeah.
They believe that all angels were once human, but through spiritual growth and transformation, ascended to a higher realm. So it's like an angelic promotion, right? Like you live a good life and boom, you get your wings.
It's a bit more nuanced than that, but you get the general idea. It's this really fascinating concept that, like, we all have the potential to become angelic beings.
I like those odds. Okay, what else is out there? What other, like, angelic interpretations?
Well, in theosophy, you have these beings called divas. And these divas, they reside within, like, natural elements. They're kind of guiding those processes of nature, like everything from the growth of a flower to the movement of the planets.
Okay, gotta admit, that one's blowing my mind a little bit. It's like we're talking about a whole ecosystem of spiritual beings, all interconnected with the natural world. This is getting deep.
Yeah. And that brings us to, I think, a critical point in our deep dive here. You see, we've talked a lot about how different cultures perceive angels, their roles, their nature, all that good stuff. But we haven't really talked about how they're portrayed visually. And when I say portrayed, I'm talking about art, those classic images of angels.
Right.
What's their story?
Okay, so let's talk art history then.
Yeah.
Where did those, like, iconic images of these winged beings come from?
Well, you might be surprised to learn that early Christian art actually depicted angels without wings.
No way.
They were often indistinguishable from humans.
Really?
It reflected that initial focus on their role as messengers, intermediaries who just blended seamlessly into the human world.
Wow. So no halos, no, like, feathery appendages, just like regular-looking folks.
Not initially. Those iconic wings, they didn't really take flight, so to speak, until around the 4th century.
Wow.
One of the earliest known depictions of a winged angel is actually on something called the prince's sarcophagus. It's thought to be from the time of Theodosius I, who was a Roman emperor.
So from wingless messengers to winged beings of wonder, all thanks to, like, a Roman emperor's tomb. That's quite the artistic evolution, I gotta say.
It really is, and it kind of speaks to how our visual language, even when we're depicting something as seemingly timeless as, like, angels, it's constantly being influenced by, like, cultural shifts and reinterpretations.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's not just the wings, right? It's the whole getup, the flowing robes.
Yeah.
Sometimes they've got the military looks going on. There's a whole wardrobe department dedicated to angelic fashion,
Oh, absolutely. Those flowing robes, they became standard attire, especially in later periods of Western art, particularly for Gabriel.
especially for Gabriel, right? I feel like every Annunciation scene, he's rocking some seriously stylish drapery.
You're not wrong, but then you have those figures like Archangel Michael,
Uh-huh.
who's often depicted as this like warrior angel, and he's got this distinctly more militant look.
Yeah, yeah. Michael's all about that, like armor-clad, sword-wielding aesthetic. It's like he stepped straight out of a celestial battle epic.
And that's no accident. Those visual cues, those were intentional. They were meant to convey very specific ideas about the roles and hierarchies of these beings.
Right. And let's not forget about those halos. Talk about a statement piece. Where did those come from?
Oh, those circles of light. They actually have a fascinating history of their own. You see, halos, they actually predate Christianity. They appear in ancient Egyptian and Greek art to kind of like signify divine or supernatural status.
Ah.
And early Christians, they adopted the halo and associated it with holiness and spiritual enlightenment. It was like a visual shorthand for
Yeah.
like, hey, this being, yeah, this one's otherworldly.
It's amazing to see how all these different artistic elements, from the wings to the robes to those halos, all came together to create the iconic image of angels that we just recognize instantly today.
It's true.
But I'm curious, with all these different interpretations, all these different depictions of angels throughout history, across all these different cultures, is there like a common thread that ties them all together? What's that one thing that makes an angel, well, an angel?
That's a fascinating question. And you know what? Despite all those variations in like appearance, their role, even their very nature, there's this one constant that just seems to persist across cultures and throughout history.
Okay, I am hooked. What's the common denominator when we're talking about angels?
It's that fundamental idea of connection, of bridging a gap.
Okay, let's unpack that a bit. What kind of gap are we talking about here?
The gap between the human and the divine,
Okay.
the material and the spiritual, the known and the unknown. Regardless of their specific attributes or the traditions they represent, angels, they always seem to embody this idea of something beyond ourselves, a link to a realm that's both awe-inspiring and profoundly mysterious.
It's like they represent a yearning within us, a desire to kind of like reach out and understand these like bigger questions, right? Those things that are just beyond our grasp.
Precisely. And it's that yearning, that enduring fascination that keeps us coming back to these stories, these images, these questions, century after century, culture after culture.
It's funny how like even when we're talking about these like ethereal beings, these angels, it's the art history stuff that really gets me. Like you can really see how these beings have been like shaped and reshaped by human imagination over the centuries.
Yeah, it's true. It speaks to their enduring power, don't you think? I mean, we've gone from these simple messengers to these incredibly complex figures, both, visually and theologically.
Totally. And yet, even with all that, there's still that core essence, that connection to something bigger than ourselves. Which, speaking of, for someone who's just tuning into like angel discourse for the first time, what would you say is the most important takeaway? If they only remember one thing about angels, what should it be?
That's a good question. I think it's this. Angels, they aren't just figures in old books or like pretty faces on stained glass windows. They represent something that's deeply ingrained in us, like this yearning for connection to something way bigger than ourselves, something that transcends just like the everyday.
A connection, like you said, that we see expressed in countless ways across different cultures throughout history. It's a universal thing, this fascination with angels.
Absolutely. Whether they're messengers, protectors, guides, forces of nature, you name it. Angels embody this, like this very human desire to try to understand our place in this larger, often very mysterious cosmos.
It really makes you wonder, like, what messages might those angels be trying to convey today? Especially now, right? In a world that often feels so disconnected from, like, the spiritual. What do you think?
That's the question, isn't it? And, maybe there's no one right answer. Maybe the message itself, it evolves alongside our own understanding of the world and where we fit into it.
Okay, that's definitely going on my list of things to ponder. But we've given our listeners plenty to think about for now, I'd say.
Oh, for sure. And we've only just like scratched the surface of this whole topic. Hopefully, we've sparked some curiosity out there, maybe even a little bit of awe and wonder along the way.
Because at the end of the day, isn't that what angels are all about?
Yeah.
They remind us that there's more to existence than, what we see right in front of us, that the world, it's full of mysteries, mysteries just waiting to be explored.
Beautifully put. And hey, who knows? Maybe those mysteries lead us right back to those angels themselves.
Ooh, I like the way you think. Always leave wanting more, right? But for now, if you're feeling inspired, if you want to explore the world of angels a bit further, don't just take our word for it. Go out there, do your own deep dive. Dive into those sources we talked about. See what resonates with you.
Exactly. And while you're at it, let us know what you think. What message do you think angels might be sending to humanity today? Share those insights with us. Hit us up on social media, drop us a line. We are always down for a good, celestial conversation.
Until next time, keep those wings flapping and those halos polished.